My guest today is Emily Fletcher, the founder of Ziva Meditation and best-selling author of Stress Less, Accomplish More, Meditation for Extraordinary Performance, which has around 1,300 reviews on Amazon. Emily used to be an actor on Broadway, but the stress and intensity of the job caught up to her. She wasn't sleeping, her hair was turning gray, and she was getting sick all the time, and she was only in her 20s. For over the past 15 years, Emily has been teaching over 50,000 people around the world how to meditate so that they can reach their full potential and live happy lives. Subscribers will also get access to a bonus episode where Emily talks about balancing internal and external factors for meditation, the I'm happy syndrome and why it's something we all need to avoid, and what factors and myths kill meditation and how to avoid that from happening. When you subscribe to Leading the Future of Work Plus, you will get a bonus episode each week, along with ad-free listening and early access to new content. Most importantly, it's how you can support this show so that I can bring in more amazing guests like Emily. And now, let's get into our discussion. Well, first, I'm really curious in your background and your story. So what I read, and you can tell me if what I read is incorrect online, but you were involved with Broadway. And through Broadway, it seems like you were unhappy with what you were doing and somehow got involved with meditation. Can you share that story?
Yeah, well, it's not that I was unhappy with what I was doing. Like, I was living my dream. I was doing the thing I wanted to do since I was 8, and I loved it. It's just that my job was basically understudying 3 of the lead roles. And that means you show up to the theater every night and you have no idea which character you're going to play.
Yeah.
So it's like, imagine showing up to your job and you're like, oh, hey, you know how you were in marketing? Well, we moved you to data and analytics. And you're like, what? And that would happen every night. And so just the anxiety of that started to lead to insomnia. I wasn't sleeping through the night for about 18 months.
Wow.
Then I started going gray. I started getting sick. And I'm like in my mid-20s at this point. And I was like, why am I living my dream and yet I'm miserable? And so thankfully, I found this meditation practice. I went along and took a course. And on the first day of my first class, I was in a different state of consciousness that I had ever been in before. And then that night, I slept through the night for the first time in 18 months.
Jeez.
And I have every night since. And that was about 13 years ago.
So what?
Then I stopped going gray.
Oh, no, I was going to ask. So
Didn't get sick for 8.5 years.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So what was that like when you say not sleeping through the night? Okay, so you're in your 20s. Were you just going to bed at like 10 and waking up at 6 and just waking up like every hour in between? Like what was actually going on with you? Why weren't you able to sleep?
So when you're on Broadway, the show gets down at 10:30. So then you normally and you have full of adrenaline. You've had bright lights in your eyes. It's like the opposite of any biohacker telling you to optimize your circadian rhythms. So I usually would wind down for an hour or so afterwards. I'm home at midnight. I'm asleep by 1 or 2. I would try to sleep until 10, but I would be waking up. So in the worst of it, it would take me hours to fall asleep. I would wake up throughout the night. At the worst of it, I remember having dreams that I was being possessed by the devil. I remember I was trapped inside of a grocery store vestibule, the 2 sliding doors.
Yeah.
In the entrance, I was trapped in there. I couldn't go in the store. I couldn't get out. And I was flying around like a poltergeist. And I remember the next day I was like, maybe my dreams are trying to tell me something. I'm nobody's self-help expert, but I think I might need to look inside here. And then shortly thereafter, I found meditation. And not only did it cure my insomnia on the first day, then I stopped going gray. I didn't get sick for 8.5 years. I used to get sick 4 or 5 times a year. And I started enjoying my job again. And I just thought, why is everyone not doing this?
Yeah.
And that's why I left Broadway and went to India and started what became a 3-year training process to teach. And it's been revolutionary.
So what was actually the problem? Why were you turning gray, getting sick, and not sleeping? Was it stress? Was it anxiety? Did you ever figure out what was causing all that?
Yeah. So it's funny because in the West, we have all these different words. We have anxiety, depression, ADHD, ADD, PTSD.
Yep.
We have all these different names that are really different incarnations of stress. right? And at the root of it is stress. And oftentimes when people hear that word stress, they think, well, I'm not stressed, or, I used to be stressed, or stress is just in my mind. Stress wouldn't impact my sleep. Stress wouldn't impact my skin. Stress is just like how I emotionally handle something, but that's not true. Stress is very much a physiological phenomenon. And even if you had 2 therapists for parents, you've been drinking green juices your whole life and working out every day, just being a human being on planet Earth right now is inherently stressful, because anytime you're putting a demand on the body, it costs it something. And so if you use electricity and stay up after the sun goes down, if you sleep in when you have blinds and don't wake up with the sun, both of those things are stressful on the body. If you look at screens all day, stressful on the body. Eating a mango in the wintertime, not natural. Flying on an airplane, not natural. All these things cost the body something. They are inherently stressful. And they're not good or bad. It's just that the piper wants to be paid. If you're going to be spending resources and energy, then we have to fill that up somewhere. And that's why meditation is so powerful at healing this root cause. So for me, it was unresolved childhood trauma. It was, the inherent, just auditioning all day. When you're working on Broadway, yes, you have this job for, 6 months, 1 year, a year and a half. There's zero job security. But all the while you're performing at night, you're auditioning for other shows during the day. And it's just rejection after rejection after rejection. You're singing and dancing and acting in front of people with lines that you got yesterday, a song that you learned an hour ago, a dance that you just learned in this minute. So you're constantly in this fight or flight. And so that over time can really start to wreak havoc on the nervous system. And especially when you're an understudy, it's like one time I was in the dressing room and they were like, Emily Fletcher, we need you on stage right now. And I ran down 7 flights of stairs. Someone threw me in an outfit and I was on stage before I knew which character I was going to play. And so you're just constantly on 11. And so that over time really started to affect my body and my performance.
Do you want to hear something really crazy? 96% of the people who watch videos on this channel are not subscribed. Can you do me a favor and help me change that number by subscribing to this YouTube channel? Thank you very much. Yeah, that sounds tough. Jeez. I mean, it sounds like the corporate world for a lot of people, right? When you get thrown into meetings, you have managers who berate you or take credit for your work and don't treat you well, and you don't know what's going to happen when you show up to work. So I would imagine there's a lot of parallels in the corporate world there too. And
thanks for drawing that parallel, because now, I left Broadway 15 years ago and I've been running this business now for over 10. And so I can see some of the similarities of when you have to put yourself that way, you have to make a presentation or pitch someone to partner, or you're in a job interview. There are similarities of the vulnerability of putting yourself out there, of giving a presentation is a performance, of not knowing, who's going to be on your team or if you're changing teams. And also just that group morale. On Broadway, you've got your dressing room, right? So that the people in your dressing room are your workmates. But that can happen certainly in an office setting. And now it's even over Zoom, we're reading everyone's micro expressions, and maybe they look weird because their cat is peeing on their lap or something. We don't know what's happening below the Zoom screen anymore. And we might be taking that personally.
And you put all this into a book, came out a couple of years ago, called Stress Less, Accomplish More, Meditation for Extraordinary Performance. Clearly the book hit a nerve with people because it has, I think, around 1,300 reviews on Amazon. So it's been selling amazingly well. What was the research that went into this? So you figured out that while you were working on Broadway, did somebody, is my story right? Somebody came up to you and told you that you needed to meditate, or that they were meditating, and you thought, oh great, you're one of those meditation people? What was that story?
It was this amazing woman named So it was this woman named Dion, and she was in a chorus line with me. She was understudying 5 of the lead roles. I was only understudying 3. So her job was much harder than mine. And this woman was crushing it. Every song, every dance, every bite of food, she'd be like, oh, this is sensational. And I was like, what do you know that I don't know? And she said, I meditate. And I was like, ugh, cue giant eye roll. Oh God, one of you. And she's like, no, Emily, it helps my stress. It helps my performance. And I didn't believe her. So I just kept going gray, having insomnia, sucking at my job. And then finally, I was like, probably around the time when I was having the possession dreams, I was like, I have to do something. And so I went along to this course and took it. And I just wish I had started sooner. I would have saved myself so much suffering.
Yeah.
I would have saved myself so many sleepless nights had I just started sooner.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking truly like, well, like, why is everyone not doing this?
And so how did that bring you to India? So you realized you needed to meditate. You started meditating. And how did you end up in India? Where in India? You were there. You lived in India for 3 years?
So I learned to meditate. I'm in New York. I'm still doing a chorus line on Broadway. And then I think I had exactly 1 week off before I started the first national tour. So a tour is like all the work of Broadway, but then you travel on your 1 day off. So you get 8 shows a week, 6 days a week. And on your day off, which is Monday, you take a plane ride, which everyone knows is super relaxing on the body. So anyway, our first city was Los Angeles. And I knew there was a bunch of meditation teachers in LA. I was like, oh, good, I'm in the belly of the beast. Now, this is like 2006-ish, maybe 2007. This is a long time ago. So like, it's hard to remember pre-Headspace, pre-Oprah Chopra, pre-10% Happier. Like, this is before any of that stuff. So meditation is still weird then. You still have to seek it out. So I'm literally like DMing people and texting them. I'm like, hi, I heard you I'm calling them on the actual telephone. Hi, I heard you're having a group meditation. And this guy was like, yeah, Wednesday, come on over. I show up, it's just him and his girlfriend. And I was like, well, this is not the group meditation experience I was really looking for. But I figured they weren't sociopaths. So I went in, I meditated with my purse on my lap. And then afterwards, I opened my eyes and I saw this beautiful, I don't know if it was a photo or a painting, but it was a bridge with this light at the end of it. And I said, what is that? And he said, that's Rishikesh. And I said, what's Rishikesh? And he said, that's this town in India. We're going there for a retreat. Do you want to come? And I was like, no, people I just met. And then I looked at the photo and I looked back at him and I said, yeah, I'm going to go. And cut to 6 months later, I took myself to India for my 30th birthday present. And we would get up every morning at dawn and we would meditate on the banks of the Ganges River. And the first day that we did it, we had to cross this bridge. And I remember it's dark outside. It's like 5:30 in the morning and the sun is just starting to rise. And right when we get to the bridge, I stop in my tracks and I see the sun rising on the other side. And it's the exact snapshot from that photo in his house. And I started sobbing, crying. And I knew that the me in that moment went to the me in Los Angeles and was like, hey, you need to come here. You need to teach this. And every time I've told that story 100 times and every time I get goosebumps when I tell it, because it just feels like one of those beautiful moments where time sort of loops in on itself and it's almost like living deja vu. And I'm so glad that I went. So I was not in India for the full 3 years. I was back and forth. And then I finally graduated and then started Ziva in 2009, I believe. And then since have taught over 50,000 people how to meditate on their own. The book, as you said, Stress Less, Accomplish More, really changed the game for me. Yeah. It really, just let people know of Ziva and let people know of the online training in a different way. And it's been so fun it's also been fun to just see what's happening societally, like as neuroscience is catching up and we're now able to quantify and prove what these Indian dudes have been saying for thousands of years. And I think as the science is catching up, I think more elite players, more founders, the Ray Dalios, the Oprah Winfreys, the Aaron Rodgers of the world, they're outing themselves as meditators. And that's been really fun to be like on the forefront of. Because I've always taught high performers, Oscar, Grammy, Tony Award winners, NBA players, Fortune 500 CEOs. And so it's been fun to watch them do it secretly and then get a little braver and then out themselves and then mention it in an interview and then watching the ripple effect of like what one CEO is like, hey, I'm meditating now. And then everyone at the company doesn't have to hide it anymore. They now have like a point of communication or unity with someone that they might not have been able to communicate with. And then certainly when you start meditation inside of a company, what can happen is really magical because it changes morale, it changes the level of coherence, and it gives people this beautiful thing to talk about that's not just work. So I find that morale really improves beautifully. That's to say nothing of, immune system and all of that. Good. So
you've had business whether CEO or mid-level or whatever, any kind of leader, but you've had business professionals come to you and say, hey, I need help meditating. Why why are you finding that people in the corporate world, like why this CEO, why does the business world care about meditation? What does meditation have to do at all with the workplace, with leadership, with anything?
Yeah, great question. Well, if you had asked me this question 3 years ago, I'd have a very different answer than I do today. And I'll share the answer that would have been 3 years ago, and then I'll share today's answer. But 3 years ago, I think honestly, if you would ask the CEO of a company, like, hey, are you interested in bringing meditation to your company? Are you interested in doing it personally? I think both the personal answer and the company answer would be, yeah, I want to be able to do this thing so that I can accomplish more, right? Like my book is called Stress Less, Accomplish More.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, do this thing and then you're going to make more money. You're going to have better sex. You're going to be more clear on your goals. You're going to have more energy to execute. And so if that's true for the leader of the company, why would it not be true for everyone inside of the company?
Yeah.
And so then I think companies were very much doing the math on, oh, this is actually saving us like $3,500 per employee per year just on sick days alone, I think is the math out of Aetna. Because they did their own meditation training inside of an insurance company. So they were able to quantify that a bit. And so I think it was very much about productivity and sort of like, well, capitalism plus, like here's some gasoline we can pour on top of our ability to achieve. Now, I think the answer is very different, right? Like the whole world went through essentially a near-death experience. The whole world faced its own mortality in a way that we had not in our lifetimes. And I think that that's really made people re-examine their priorities. I think working from home has made people re-examine their priorities. They want to spend more time with their kids. People are inherently more stressed because of the just ever looming, changing nature of reality right now. If leaving your house makes you fear for your life, a lot of people were a lot more stressed in fight or flight, and that has led to inevitable burnout, right? Like we already had a mental health crisis, and then the pandemic just poured gasoline on it. And so now I think that employers are very much like, oh, if I don't proactively give my team resources, I am watching them in real time leave or burn out. And so I have to get ahead of this. It's so expensive to hire. It's so expensive to have someone in a role burned out and not able to perform. And now there's no pool to draw from because everyone's burning out all over the place. It's not like you can go and poach someone from someone else. So we really have to address this mental health crisis quickly and expertly. And I think as far as employees now, it's like we're not just looking for tools to run on the rat wheel faster. Yeah. Right? We're looking for tools to enrich our lives, to make it all matter, we could achieve our goals, but am I happy while I'm doing it? And so I think that we are really shifting into a more feminine paradigm. Like I think we've been in a very masculine paradigm, and this is not to do with gender. It's everyone has masculine and feminine polarities inside of them, but the world at large has been leading from a place of masculinity, of achieve, accomplish, conquer. And now, like we're all men and women shifting into one of receive, lean back, listen, soften, slow down. Yeah. And we're seeing that actually we can in fact achieve more from a place of stillness, from a place of listening. And there is nothing more powerful, there's nothing more pleasurable than meditation to help you get into that space.
And I'll tell you how I kind of think about it, because I started meditating. My wife got me into it probably at some point last year. And the way that I think of meditation, and nobody ever taught me anything. I never did classes. I just do it through the Peloton app, because we have a Peloton. So we open up the Peloton app. They have these guided meditations. And so my understanding of meditation has always been, it's just a period of time where you sit quietly and you just reflect and let your thoughts fly around. And that's always how I thought of, like, that's what meditation is. And I have always struggled with it. I mean, even to this day, I struggle with it, right? Because I'm like meditating, and I immediately, like, all this stuff starts to pop into my mind. And next thing I know, I don't even know what the Peloton instructor is telling me to do anymore, because I'm like off somewhere, and she's telling me to recite something and to think about my thoughts as clouds or children playing in a field. And I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, I got to reach out to this person. I got to follow up on this speaking request. Next thing you know, the 10 minutes are over. I don't know what the hell this instructor just told me. And then I walk away from that and I'm like, did I just meditate? Like, what just happened? So how do you define, like, what is meditation And is what I described common? And what do you do?
Yeah, thanks so much for bringing this up, because I know that you're not alone. It's really common because as meditation is getting more popular, you're finding, facsimiles of it everywhere on Peloton, on Headspace, there's like hundreds of thousands of mindfulness apps. There's hundreds of thousands of YouTube quote unquote meditation channels. And I'm happy for all of it, right? Like I'm happy that people are collectively remembering to turn inward. So this is not a judgment call on anything else, but I am admittedly a meditation snob. Okay, I've been doing this stuff. I've dedicated my entire life and consciousness to it, basically 24 hours a day for the past, 15 or 16 years. So I am really passionate about it and a total snob. So take that for what it's worth. But I would define meditation as a verifiable fourth state of consciousness, which is different than waking, sleeping, or dreaming. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when you're listening to that Peloton app or someone's guiding you through, that's very much keeping you in your left brain. It's keeping you in your waking state of consciousness. And that is different than what I teach at Ziva. Okay, so in Ziva, I teach you a style of meditation that is giving your body rest, that is 5 times deeper than sleep, and where you're accessing that fourth state of consciousness where the right and left hemispheres of the brain are functioning in unison. And this is a really important point, because when you start to create that coherence in your brain, you strengthen something called the corpus callosum. Now, the corpus callosum is the thin strip that connects the right and left hemispheres of the brain. And this really matters because the left hemisphere of the brain is left brain, analytics, math, balancing your checkbook, past, future, masculine, navigation, all really important. But for most of us, we've been taking our left brain to the gym our whole lives. Meanwhile, we have the whole other 50%. This whole other lobe that's meant for present moment awareness, listening, intuition, creative problem solving, music, connectivity, improv. These are all right brain phenomenon. And if you look at a human brain, it splits right down the middle, 50-50. And I don't think that nature makes mistakes. I do not think that nature would have given us 50-50 if she wanted us to use 90-10. Yeah. And yet this is what most of us are doing. So when you meditate, specifically at Ziva, not only are you giving your body this deep rest, so it feels like a supercharged power nap without the sleep hangover, right? So in 15 minutes, you're getting like an hour's worth of nap, actually hour and a half. Not only are you starting to meld the right and left hemispheres of the brain, but you're actually strengthening the white matter by like something like 27%. You can strengthen the thickness of your corpus callosum. Now, fun party trick, but why would I want a fat corpus callosum? Well, everyone should, because it is the bridge between the creative and the critical. It is the bridge between the past and future and the present moment. It is the thing that allows you to not only prepare for that presentation, but to execute on it really well when it's go time, right? It's the thing that allows you to be both prepared and memorized and improvisational at the same time, where you're firing on all cylinders. And so we get to that state, not through clearing the mind, not through focusing, not through chanting, not through someone else guiding you into a waterfall or a visualization on chakras. And not that there's nothing wrong with any of those things. They're beautiful. It's just anytime someone's guiding you through something, I would call that mindfulness. Because if your left brain is engaged, if you're focusing on something, that is a directed, focused style of meditation, which I would call mindfulness. Right? I know a lot of people use the terms mindfulness and meditation interchangeably, and that gets confusing for folks.
Do you want to learn how to create an amazing corporate culture while avoiding the pitfalls that make for a toxic one? If so, I created a brand new 8-part training video series just for you. In total, it's around 30 minutes in length, and you can get it right now by going to helpmyculture.com. Go there right now before this training series disappears forever. Again, that is helpmyculture.com, and get access to this free 8-part training series on how to create an amazing corporate culture. So what is the difference? So I guess technically what I've been doing is maybe more mindfulness instead of meditation.
Totally.
So what is the difference?
Yeah, so mindfulness, you are directing your focus. It's a left brain waking state phenomenon. So anytime you're focusing on your breath, you're chanting, you're counting your breathing, visualizing a waterfall, visualizing your energy centers, I would put that in the category of mindfulness, which is really good at creating a state change. It's really good at changing your stress in the now. Whoa, my boss yelled at me. I came in, I did this 10-minute thing. I focused on my breath and I feel better in the now. Awesome. We use mindfulness as the appetizer at Ziva, right? Like this is like the prelude to the main course of meditation, which is all about getting rid of your stress from the past. Okay, so mindfulness, handling your stress in the now, state change. Meditation, at least especially what I teach at Ziva, is getting rid of your stress from the past. And we do that through giving your body this deep rest. Because when you give your body the rest that it needs, it knows how to heal itself. And one of the things that it heals itself from is stress. Not only the stress from today, but all that stress that we've been accumulating in our cells, all that stress from our past. And we're starting to see that now, like in the world, right? Like you can see in your family, in your colleagues, on your social media feed, like this cumulative stress that's been building up from, just the inevitability of the last few years. So we get that stress is not just like, oh, I got stressed that afternoon and then it's gone. You actually have to do something to eradicate that stress from the cellular memory. And that's the point of Ziva. And then the third M, because Ziva's 3 M's, mindfulness, meditation, and manifesting. So when we finish our practice, I basically invite people to imagine, like, what would they love, right? What would you love? So manifesting is all about handling your dreams for the future.
I love that approach. So what is the difference as far as like the Ziva technique? So if it's not sitting there for 10 minutes, chanting or going through a guided meditation on the Peloton app, what is the difference between the approach that you have created? So if I was meditating right now, and I don't know if 10 minutes is enough or if you need longer, what would I be doing that's so different than what so many people think they're doing, which is really mindfulness?
Yeah. So again, this is no shade on guided stuff. Like I love it. I think there's a use case for it. I love that people are like turning inward and not going to tequila or, there's a lot of other things you could be doing, right? So I'm happy that people are doing it. I just want people to know that a guided mindfulness app is like drinking a delicious glass of water when you're thirsty. There is an ocean available, right? Like you can also jump into the ocean. And that's sort of the difference between a guided 10-minute audio and Ziva. So one of the things that's so unique about this is that it's actually a training. It's a 15-day matriculation that walks you through step by step so that by the time you graduate, you don't need me anymore. You don't need the app anymore. You don't need your phone or Wi-Fi or headphones or anyone else guiding you on how to access that bliss, which is only really ever found inside of you. Right. So I'm really big on self-sufficiency, and it's not a great business model, quite honestly, because once people graduate, they don't need me anymore. And so I feel like I'm racking up a lot of karmic points, if not the best business model of all time.
Ongoing monthly subscription in perpetuity.
Right. So it's like take the 15 days, learn the tools, learn all 3 M's. And then, of course, you can come and like be in the membership. And yes, there's ways to interact with me. But what I want is you meditating on your own, spreading that bliss into the world. So once people graduate, they are trained in mindfulness, meditation, and manifesting, and they can do it on their own, on a plane, on a bus, in a cubicle, with your kids screaming in the next room. All you have to do is close your eyes, and then you start flooding your brain and body with dopamine and serotonin, which are bliss chemicals, which not only help you feel good in the sitting, but that the dopamine and serotonin stay with you throughout the rest of the day. And you're simultaneously eradicating the adrenaline and cortisol, which are stress hormones, right? Which are wreaking havoc on your skin, your sex drive, your immune function, your aging. Like if we're constantly acidic with adrenaline and cortisol, it prematurely ages us. It throws, all of your endocrine systems out of whack. So again, this is not just like, oh, if I'm stressed, I feel a little on edge. Yeah. No, like if you're stressed, you're basically pickling yourself with acidity, which wreaks havoc on every single system in your body.
Pickling yourself. I've never thought about it that way. That sounds terrifying. I don't want to pickle myself.
It's gross and true.
Yeah. So your approach. So what's the difference with your approach then? So if I was doing the Ziva technique right now, and I'm not asking to go through the full 15-day program in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But what is the major difference? Is it just how I approach it? If it's not a guided meditation and it's not a chant, is it visualization? Like what is it that separates the techniques that you've created from what most people are doing out there?
Yeah. I mean, one, efficacy, like people just feel a lot better, a lot faster. They're like, oh, my insomnia is also gone. I stopped biting my nails. I am not drinking as much. I forgot to turn on my coffee machine. oh, my Fitbit says that my sleep was at 95%. So like people start to see these results really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And so that's because we are giving that body that deep rest, 5 times deeper than sleep, and because you're accessing that fourth state of consciousness. Now, as far as the technique is concerned, you're starting with the mindfulness, right? So it's where you're bringing your awareness. I would define mindfulness as the art of bringing your awareness into the present moment. So I'm helping people to have tools to get into the present moment, to create a state change. So wherever you are, whatever's going on in your world, don't just imagine you're going 90 miles an hour, just like that deep healing rest of meditation. That transition is too abrupt for most people. So I give people the mindfulness as a phase shift, as a gear shift.
Okay.
Right. And then I teach you, and this is the main course of part of the training is like days 4 through 12. I'm giving people the keys to the car and the driving instructions for how to fall into that deeply surrendered state. Now, what I teach is based on something called Nishkam Karma Yoga, which means union attained by action hardly taken. Union attained by action hardly taken. So lazy meditation. So this means that when you're in it, like I said, you're not focusing or chanting or guiding. It's not about extended breath work, which is awesome. I love breath work. It's just very different from this style of meditation. Honestly, it feels kind of like a nap sitting up. It looks kind of like this. Like your head is weeble wobbling. This is great posture for us. It does not look good on Instagram, but it feels amazing. You're giving your body this deep rest. And then on the other side, you have all of this energy, all this creativity, all this productivity, and you don't have a sleep hangover. And then the other piece that's different is that we finish every single session with the manifestation. And especially for high achievers, especially for people who are goal oriented, then it's like oftentimes they're like, well, they can justify the quote unquote like waste of time with meditation because at the end they know they're going to hitch that wagon to their dreams. Like, well, no, I know I can spend 2 minutes now visualizing my quarterly goals or like imagining my dream employee that I'm going to hire or, just really getting clear on like, what do we want our earnings to be this quarter? So it's like you're the other piece is that like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. When you do all 3 M's together, you're going to get so much benefit than doing one alone. It's like cardio and weightlifting, right? Like they're better together.
How much of this depends on people being able to identify how they're feeling, like their feelings and emotions, right? Because there's some people out there who are maybe, I use my dad as an example, right? Russian immigrant parent. He's in his 70s, and if I were to tell my dad to meditate, he would probably think I'm out of my mind. And there's some people out there just like old school, right? They don't know their feelings, they can't name their emotions, they're not good at that stuff. You ask them to close their eyes for 10 minutes, after 30 seconds, they're like, this sucks, this is dumb. Do you need to be a certain kind of person to meditate? Do you need to be able to reflect and practice introspection and have self-awareness for this?
Great question. No, you don't have to believe in it. You don't have to want to feel your feelings. You can think the whole thing is hooey. Like, I don't care why people come to meditation. I just care that they come. Like, really, your motivation can be like, I want to make more money, or I'm just doing this to make my son happy. Like, it does not matter why you come to meditation. It just matters that you do it. And it works for everyone. Like, just like sleep works for everyone, meditation works for everyone. Like, if you don't sleep, like, let's say we took 100 people and didn't allow them to sleep for 20 days. It would be bad for all of them. Yeah. But how that showed up, some people might get anxious. Some people their body might start eating itself. Some people might go into full catatonic depression. Some people, like, the symptoms would be different. The cure for all of those people would in fact be sleep. And so meditation is similar because at Ziva, because we're giving the body rest, it's 5 times deeper than sleep. The stress is showing up differently. For a lot of people, your dad, who knows? He might be drinking. He might be having rage fits. He might be shutting down and becoming depressed. I don't know him. Yeah. But like your mom might have a totally different stress reaction. And yet the cure for both people is get rid of the stress. Handle the root cause. Don't necessarily worry about treating the symptom. And that's why I just keep beating this drum. I'm like, we have to solve the stress at the root cause, because otherwise it's just a Band-Aid, right? It's like, well, I'm going to the gym for 15 minutes, and look, exercise is great, okay? Exercise is really good at changing your state in the now. It, again, is not going to handle the root cause because it's more excitation. whereas Ziva is de-excitation. You are de-exciting the nervous system. When you de-excite something, you create order. And when you create order in the body, then that stress that we've stored in that cellular memory can finally start to come up and out. So long answer to a short question, you do not have to be able to feel your feelings or have any real level of emotional intelligence in order to do this. It's truly as simple as taking a nap. It's just a nap that's 5 times more powerful without the sleep hangover. And then, good news, as you spend that time kind of chipping away and peeling away the layers of stress, we become much more fluent in the language of our emotions, because honestly, the reason why most people don't feel their feelings is because they're sitting on top of a tsunami. We haven't been trained how to feel our feelings. We've been trained since infancy to shh, don't cry, have a bottle, have a toy, have some Facebook. And so we've just got decades of stuff built up. And so once we start to peel away those layers, then having a 5-minute cry doesn't seem so debilitating.
How long does this whole process take? So for people who are just trying to figure out, like, how much of a time commitment am I looking at each day here? How long does it take? Is it something that people do once a day, twice a day?
So what I teach at Ziva is twice a day, and it's only 15 minutes twice a day. Well, let me be totally honest, because you seem like a real... and I get it, the busy people schedule every minute of every day. So it's about 15 minutes of the mindfulness and meditation. And then we end with 2 minutes of manifesting. So technically you're 17 minutes twice a day, but it's a lot catchier to say 15 minutes for 15 days. So the training is 15 days.
So you can do it maybe like in the morning.
You're looking at...
Yeah, like morning when you wake up.
In the morning before coffee. You don't want to do it before you go to bed, interestingly. So I recommend that people do their second sitting actually like during their workday. So like 2, 3, 4 p.m. where like you would have had the coffee, where you start to go a little bleary-eyed at your computer screen. That's a great time to stand up, step away from your computer, close your eyes and do the 17-minute sitting. And then you find that you have this huge hit of energy and productivity and creativity on the other side. And then you have energy to play with your kids. You have energy to do your side hustle. You have energy to go out with your friends. Yeah. And then interestingly, you're much better able to go to sleep at night, because if you don't do that meditation and your body's exhausted, the body has to produce more adrenaline and more cortisol in order to stay awake. And then that's the thing that gives you insomnia.
What's the science behind all of this? Because I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, like, what's actually going on in the brain, in the body? So it seems like when you're stressed and you do get these feelings, that's the cortisol, that's the adrenaline, all that sort of stuff spikes. It makes you feel uncomfortable. And the meditation piece, is that kind of like what calms all of that down and allows you to refocus and removes the cortisol and the adrenaline and brings you kind of back to a base level?
Yeah. So if you think about where the stress came from, it's a fight or flight response, right? The body's always trying to stay alive. So for thousands of years, we had to protect ourselves from predators. And you've probably all heard about, fight or flight. You get stressed, your body thinks there's some sort of danger. So that what happens neurochemically in the body is that body, dumps adrenaline and cortisol, which is going to shut down your immune system, because it's like, well, who cares if you're going to get cancer if you're about to be killed by a tiger? We need all hands on deck to handle this tiger. Your digestion will flood with acid to shut down digestion, because you need all that energy. Instead of digesting the food, you need that to outrun the tiger. That acid will then seep onto your skin so that you don't taste very good if the tiger were to bite into you. That's what causes premature aging, that acidity on the skin. Then your blood starts to thicken and coagulate so that if you were to get bitten into, you wouldn't bleed out. So that's what can over time cause heart disease. And that's one of the main benefits we see from meditation, is like a decrease in heart disease.
Sounds lovely.
Oh, and bladder and bowels will evacuate to be light on your feet. So like nervous poos even are your body trying to protect itself. So all of those chemical reactions are very helpful if your demands are predatory attacks. But now that's not the world we live in anymore. And so this fight or flight stress reaction has become maladaptive. It's now disallowing us from performing as we were designed, and it's costing us a lot. So what happens in meditation is not only are we getting rid of the adrenaline and cortisol, but we're flooding it with that dopamine and serotonin, which are alkaline in nature. right? So it's almost like drinking a green juice for your brain. It's like anti-aging. And they've come out with some studies from Tufts and Wake Forest suggesting that meditation can reverse your body age somewhere between 8 and 15 years.
Wow.
So, and you've seen this, like you've seen like women who are at the yoga studio in their 60s who are like radiant and stunning, which is different than you go to your, 40-year high school reunion and the guy who's been drinking and sitting in a recliner for 20 years looks like he's 80. It's like we see lifestyle show up on people's faces. This is not a mystery.
No.
And yet when it's us, it's harder to commit to. So it's just understanding that this is not just like a bubble bath for your brain, right? This is not like a cute pedicure that you need to get around to when you have more time. This is the single most important piece of mental hygiene that truly all of us need to be practicing, if not for our own benefit, then for our families, for our coworkers, and for the next generation. Because if we don't handle this stuff in ourselves, we pass it down epigenetically. We know now that we inherit stress at least 2 generations prior, which means that we pass down stress at least 2 generations in the future. And so if that's not enough of an, if your own health and happiness is not motivating enough, then what about your kids? What about your kids' kids? So it's like really the least selfish thing we could be doing.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Just kind of the impacts and the science behind it. So the last 15 minutes or so, I thought we could talk about some action items and sort of where to begin with all this. My conversation with Emily continues for subscribers of Leading the Future of Work Plus, where Emily talks about balancing internal and external factors around meditation, the I'm happy syndrome and why it's something we all need to avoid, and the factors and myths that kill meditation and how to avoid that from happening. Remember, if you subscribe, you get access to a weekly bonus episode, ad-free listening, early access to new content, and it's your opportunity to support this show so that I can bring in more amazing guests like Emily. I hope you decide to subscribe to Leading the Future of Work Plus, and I'll see you next week.